We find ourselves, it seems, perpetually walking a tightrope. On one side lies the rigid, tyrannical certainty of too much order, and on the other, the terrifying, formless abyss of chaos. This is the fundamental reality of conscious existence, a reality that demands constant negotiation and careful navigation. The question that confronts every one of us, every single day, is how to conduct ourselves in the face of this profound existential challenge. How do we find meaning when the ground beneath our feet seems to be constantly shifting? How do we build something of value, something noble, when the forces of dissolution and decay are ever present? It's a question that has plagued mankind since the dawn of time, and it's a question that demands an answer from each of us individually. It's not enough to simply wonder. That's a path to nihilism and despair. We are called, I believe, to do more than that. We are called to create, to aim upward, to bring forth habitable order from the chaos of potential. This is the heroic journey. It's the journey of confronting the dragon of chaos and retrieving the gold of meaning, of purpose, of a life well lived. In Peterson's book, Beyond Order, he attempted to lay out a series of guideposts, 12 more rules for this journey. These aren't simple maxims or easy platitudes. They are instead difficult and demanding propositions for how one might orient themselves toward the highest good, even and especially when confronted with the suffering and malevolence that is an undeniable part of life. So, today I want to walk with you through these 12 rules. We're going to explore what they mean, not just as abstract concepts, but as practical tools for living. We'll delve into the psychological and philosophical underpinnings of each one and consider how you might apply them to your own life, to your own specific set of circumstances. This isn't about finding easy answers. It's about learning to ask the right questions and to bear the responsibility of finding your own answers. It's about voluntarily shouldering the burden of being, and in doing so, discovering the profound meaning that makes that burden not only bearable, but worth carrying. Let's begin. There's a temptation, a dangerous and seductive one, particularly when you're young and idealistic, to look at the structures of our society and see only their flaws. You see the corruption, the hypocrisy, the inefficiency, and the immediate, almost reflexive response is to call for it all to be torn down. It's all broken. The inner critic screams, burn it to the ground and start again. This is an impulse born of a profound and perilous naivety. It fails to appreciate the sheer, almost miraculous improbability of these structures existing in the first place. Our social institutions, our legal systems, our governments, our traditions are the product of millennia of human effort, trial, and catastrophic error. They are the painstakingly constructed bulwarks against the chaos that is always threatening to rush in and swallow us whole. Think of them as a dam holding back an ocean of unimaginable destructive force. Yes, the dam has cracks. Yes, it requires constant maintenance and repair. But to carelessly swing a sledgehammer at its foundations without a deeply considered and viable plan for what comes next is to invite a flood that will sweep away not just the corrupt and the flawed, but everything of value, including yourself. To stand on the shoulders of giants and to complain about the view is the height of ungrateful arrogance. Before you criticize, you must first understand, and that is a task that requires humility and immense effort. The same principle applies, perhaps even more acutely, to creative achievement. When you encounter a great work of art, a profound piece of music, or a revolutionary scientific theory, the proper initial response is not cynical deconstruction, it is awe. It is the recognition that you are in the presence of something that has been wrested from the void. The creative act is a courageous confrontation with the unknown. It is the artist, the composer, the thinker venturing into the dragon's lair and returning with a treasure for the rest of us. To denigrate that achievement without first grappling with its substance, without attempting to understand the vision and the sacrifice that brought it into being, is to cheapen the very spirit of human potential. So, the rule is a call to a certain kind of conservative temperament in the deeper sense of that word. It's a call to conserve what is valuable. It means you must first learn the rules of the game before you try to change them. You must apprentice yourself to the tradition before you can transcend it. This isn't a call for blind obedience or an end to progress. Quite the contrary. It is the necessary precondition for genuine, sustainable progress. True reform, true creation, comes from a place of deep respect for what has come before, a sober understanding of its strengths and weaknesses, and the courage to build upon that foundation rather than demolishing it in a fit of pique. There is a version of you, a potential you, that stands as the best possible you that you could bring into being. This isn't some fantasy. It's a composite of your strengths, your latent abilities, your highest aspirations, all integrated and aimed at the highest good you can conceive. The first and perhaps most terrifying step is to dare to imagine that person. Who could you be if you stopped lying to yourself? Who could you be if you stopped doing the things you know are wrong? Who could you be if you shouldered your proper burden of responsibility and spoke the truth? It's a daunting image because the gap between that person and who you are now can feel like an impassable chasm. This act of imagination is a moral obligation. Without an aim, you are adrift in the chaos of infinite possibility, and that is a recipe for anxiety and nihilism. You'll be buffeted by the whims of others, by the temptations of the moment, by the pathologies of the crowd. You need a star to navigate by, a point on the horizon to orient your life. That point is the vision of your best self. It's not about achieving some static perfection. The goal isn't the end point. The goal is the aiming itself. It is the process of striving, of moving forward, of continually recalibrating your path towards that highest ideal. It is in the aiming that you will find the meaning that sustains you through the suffering of life. Now, to aim single-mindedly at that vision requires sacrifice. This is the part that people don't want to hear. To become who you could be, you must let go of who you are. You must be willing to shed the parts of yourself that are no longer serving that higher aim. The bad habits, the cynical attitudes, the comfortable resentments, the self-deceptions. It's a process of death and rebirth. You have to let the old, insufficient you die so that the new, more capable you can be born. This is painful. It means confronting uncomfortable truths about yourself, acknowledging your own inadequacies and malevolence, and voluntarily choosing the difficult path over the easy one. But the alternative is so much worse. The alternative is to remain a fraction of what you could be, to live a life of quiet desperation, haunted by the ghost of your unfulfilled potential. That is a genuine experience of hell. So, you must ask yourself a serious question. What is your highest value? What is the guiding principle of your life? Once you have an answer, even a partial one, you must organize yourself around it. You must subordinate everything else to that aim. Your actions, your thoughts, your words, all must be brought into alignment with that single, focused purpose. That is how you transcend the chaos. That is how you build a life of substance and significance. We all have a fog bank in our minds. It's a place where we banish the things we don't want to deal with. The uncomfortable conversation you need to have with your partner. The nagging health concern you've been ignoring. The awareness of your own insufficiency in some critical area of your life. The memory of a past mistake that fills you with shame. We push these things into the fog, hoping that if we don't look at them, they will simply cease to exist. We tell ourselves it's not that bad, that we'll deal with it later, that it's too complicated to think about right now. This is a catastrophic error in judgment. Because what you refuse to confront does not disappear. It festers. In the darkness and the fog, it grows. The small problem you ignored becomes a moderate problem. The moderate problem, left unattended, metastasizes into a full-blown crisis. The little dragon you could have slain when it was small grows into a monstrous beast that threatens to consume your entire life. The fog doesn't hide things, it incubates them. And worse, the energy it takes to keep these things suppressed, to maintain the fog, is immense. It drains you, making you anxious, irritable, and weak, precisely when you need your strength to face the very problems you are avoiding. The act of turning to face the things you have hidden is an act of supreme courage. It is the hero's journey in miniature. It's Perseus looking at Medusa's reflection in his shield. You cannot look at the horror directly, perhaps, but you must look. You must articulate the problem. You must drag it out of the fog and into the light of conscious awareness. You have to say, here is the problem. This is what I am afraid of. This is the ugly truth I have been avoiding. The simple act of verbalizing it, of defining its boundaries, is often enough to cut it down to size. What seemed like an all-encompassing monster in the fog becomes a specific, definable problem that can be addressed. So, you must make a habit of voluntarily exploring the fog. Sit down and ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What am I pretending not to know? What problem is making itself known in my anxiety, in my resentment, in my physical symptoms? Write it down. Speak it aloud. Tell someone you trust. By doing this, you are no longer a passive victim of your unacknowledged fears. You become an active agent in your own life. You are taking the chaos of the unknown and transforming it into the order of the known. And in that transformation, you not only solve the problem, you become stronger, more competent, and more courageous in the process. It's a common proclivity of the modern spirit to view responsibility as a burden, as something to be avoided. We want the rights without the duties, the rewards without the effort. We look at a problem, and our first thought is often, "That's not my job. Someone else should fix that." We see a mess, literal or metaphorical, and we step around it. We see a void in leadership, a gap in competence, a breakdown in order, and we wait for someone else, some authority figure, to step in and take care of it. This is the path of the eternal child, and it is a path that leads nowhere worth going. What this rule proposes is a radical shift in perspective. It suggests that these very areas of abdicated responsibility are not problems to be avoided, but opportunities in disguise. Where there is chaos, there is a chance to create order. Where there is a mess, there is an opportunity to clean it up and, in doing so, to make things better. Where everyone else is stepping back, afraid or unwilling to take charge, there is a space for you to step forward. This is where the gold is hidden. Meaning in life is not found in the pursuit of happiness or the avoidance of pain. It is found in the voluntary adoption of responsibility. Think about it in the most practical terms. In your workplace, what is the task that everyone complains about, but no one wants to do? Volunteer for it. Master it. Become the person who can handle it. You will instantly become more valuable, more competent, and more respected. In your family, what is the difficult conversation that everyone is avoiding? Be the one to initiate it, carefully and truthfully. You take on the short-term burden, but you open the door to long-term health and resolution. In your community, what is the problem that everyone agrees is a problem, but no one is doing anything about? Start doing something about it, even if it's small. This isn't about becoming a martyr or taking on the world's problems. It's about starting where you are with what's in front of you. Look around your own life, your own small sphere of influence. Where has responsibility been abdicated? It might be as simple as the pile of dishes in the sink, or as complex as the dysfunctional dynamic in your social circle. By choosing to pick up that dropped responsibility, you are doing more than just fixing a problem. You are strengthening your own character. You are exchanging the flimsy security of passivity for the solid foundation of competence and purpose. You are answering the call to adventure, and that is where life is truly lived. This rule sounds simple, perhaps even hedonistic. Do not do what you hate could easily be misinterpreted as only do what makes you happy or avoid all difficult tasks. But that is a shallow and dangerous reading. This rule is not about avoiding difficulty. It is about preserving the integrity of your soul. It is a profound statement about the corrosive nature of self-betrayal. There is a part of you, your conscience, your innermost being, that knows when you are acting in a way that is contrary to your own deepest values. When you violate that knowledge, you do violence to yourself. To do what you hate is to say yes when you mean no. It's to mouth words you don't believe to placate a boss or a social group. It's to continue down a career path that you know in your heart of hearts is turning you into someone you despise. It's the small daily acts of inauthenticity and deceit that accumulate over time. Each time you do this, you weaken yourself. You teach yourself that your own judgment is untrustworthy and that your values are negotiable. You generate a kind of internal conflict, a war within your own psyche that manifests as resentment, bitterness, and a gnawing sense of meaninglessness. This internal state of corruption will inevitably spill out into the world. A person who consistently acts against their own conscience becomes resentful. They start to see the world through a distorted lens, blaming others, blaming the system, blaming God for their own self-inflicted misery. They become cynical and manipulative because they have taught themselves that truth doesn't matter. This is the pathway to hell, both personally and socially. The great atrocities of history were not committed by people who were gleefully evil for the most part. They were committed by people who learned step by step to do what they hated, to ignore the protest of their own conscience until it fell silent. So, this rule is a command to cultivate your own internal alarm system. You must pay attention to that feeling of weakness and shame that accompanies self-betrayal. You must learn to say no to the things that violate your sense of right and wrong, even when it's difficult, even when it has short-term costs. This isn't an excuse to be lazy or to shirk your duties. In fact, it often means taking on the much harder task of finding a different path, of speaking an uncomfortable truth, of negotiating for a better way. It is the ultimate act of self-respect, and it is the foundation upon which a genuine, meaningful life can be built. An ideology is a simple idea that claims to explain everything. It's a pre-packaged set of beliefs, a rigid framework that you can apply to the complex, messy reality of the world to make it seem simple and understandable. It offers a clear enemy, a straightforward narrative of oppression and power, and a utopian vision for the future if only its tenets are followed. And that is precisely what makes it so catastrophically dangerous. It's a parasite that takes over the thinking function of the individual, replacing genuine, difficult thought with simplistic, emotionally satisfying dogma. When you are possessed by an ideology, you no longer see individuals. You see only representatives of groups. You see a capitalist, a patriarch, a socialist, an oppressor, or a member of the oppressed. You stop listening to what people are actually saying and instead filter their words through the lens of your ideological framework, twisting them to fit your preconceived notions. This is the death of genuine communication. It makes dialogue impossible because the goal is no longer to understand or to seek truth, but to categorize, to condemn, and to assert the moral superiority of your own group. The 20th century is a testament written in blood to the horror of ideological possession. The great totalitarian regimes, both on the right and the left, were built on the foundation of simple, all-encompassing ideas that justified the sacrifice of millions of individual human beings for a hypothetical future paradise. The ideologue is willing to sacrifice the concrete reality of the suffering person in front of them for the abstract purity of their theory. This is a demonic temptation, and it's one that we must be constantly on guard against, especially within ourselves. The antidote to ideology is twofold. First, it is a commitment to the individual. You must strive to encounter each person as a unique locus of consciousness, with their own story, their own suffering, and their own potential. You must listen. You must assume that the person you are talking to knows something you don't. Second, the antidote is a focus on your own life. Clean up your own room. Sort out your own family. Get your own mind in order. Abandon the arrogant presumption that you know how to rearrange the world before you've even managed to arrange your own life. Address the concrete, solvable problems within your own sphere of competence. This humility is the shield against the siren song of ideology. We live in an age of distraction. Our attention is constantly being fragmented, pulled in 1,000 different directions by notifications, by endless streams of trivial information, by the demand to be everything to everyone. In this environment, the idea of deep, focused, disciplined work on a single pursuit can seem almost archaic. It's so much easier to dabble, to be a dilettante, to skim the surface of many things rather than plumbing the depths of one. But you know, this path of diffusion is a path to mediocrity and a profound lack of self-knowledge. This rule is a call to adventure. It's an invitation to pick one thing, one skill, one craft, one area of knowledge, one project, and to dedicate yourself to it with an almost monastic devotion. Choose something that is difficult and worthwhile, something that calls to you, something that aligns with the vision you have for yourself. It could be learning a musical instrument, mastering a trade, pursuing a difficult academic subject, or building a business. The specific, what is less important than the how. The how is with everything you have. You pour your time, your energy, and your focus into it, pushing past the initial excitement and into the long, arduous plateau of genuine learning. Something remarkable happens when you do this. First, you begin to transform the chaos of your own potential into the order of actual competence. You move from being someone who could do something to someone who can. This builds a form of self-respect and self-trust that cannot be obtained in any other way. You learn that you are capable of discipline, that you can overcome frustration and boredom, that you can, through sheer effort, become better. The world starts to reveal its secrets to you in that one domain. You develop a discerning eye, an appreciation for nuance and mastery that is invisible to the casual observer, and this has a ripple effect on the rest of your life. The discipline you cultivate in one area begins to bleed over into others. The confidence you gain from mastering one difficult thing gives you the courage to tackle others. You learn the universal principles of progress, the importance of incremental improvement, the necessity of feedback, the reality that failure is a part of the process. By committing to one thing, you learn how to commit to anything. You stop being a ship without a rudder, tossed about by the waves, and you become the captain of your own vessel, capable of setting a course and navigating towards a chosen destination. This rule might seem trivial compared to the grand existential challenges we've been discussing. Beauty. In a world full of suffering and malevolence, why should we concern ourselves with aesthetics? But this is to misunderstand the profound psychological significance of beauty. To consciously create beauty is to make a statement. It is to declare that despite the chaos and the ugliness of the world, order, harmony, and grace are not only possible, but worth striving for. It is an act of defiance against the void. It is a microcosm of the great work of civilization, creating a habitable, ordered space within the untamed wilderness. Your immediate environment is not just a neutral backdrop to your life. It is a reflection of your mind. If you live in chaos, If your surroundings are disorganized, ugly, and neglected, that external disorder will seep inward. It will reinforce a sense of hopelessness and self-contempt. It communicates to the deepest part of your psyche that you are not worthy of a well-ordered space, that you are someone who deserves to live in a mess. To tolerate ugliness in your immediate vicinity is to tolerate ugliness in your own soul. It's a form of passive acceptance of the forces of decay. The instruction is precise and, importantly, manageable. It doesn't say, fix your whole life at once. It says, make one room as beautiful as possible. Start small. Pick one room, perhaps the one where you spend the most time awake. It could be your bedroom or your office. Then ask yourself a serious question. What would make this room beautiful to me? This isn't about conforming to some magazine's idea of interior design. It's about consulting your own aesthetic sense. What colors bring you a sense of calm? What art speaks to you? What kind of order and arrangement would make you feel centered and at peace? This is an act of profound self-respect. By taking the time and effort to create a space that is beautiful, you are affirming your own value. You are creating a sanctuary, a small island of order and harmony where you can retreat from the chaos of the world. It is a place that reminds you of what is good, what is true, and what is beautiful. This practice is not an escape from responsibility. It is a way of fortifying yourself for it. By creating order in your physical space, you are practicing the very skills you need to create order in your psychological space, in your relationships, and in the world at large. The past is not dead. In fact, as Faulkner said, it's not even past. There are parts of our personal history that remain undigested, unresolved. These are the memories that ambush us. A stray comment, a particular smell, a song on the radio can suddenly transport you back to a moment of pain, betrayal, or humiliation, and the emotional response is as raw and as powerful as if it were happening right now. These memories are not just memories. They are unquiet ghosts. They haunt the present, constraining your behavior, poisoning your relationships, and limiting your future. They are fragments of chaos lodged within your psyche. When a memory retains its full emotional charge, it's a sign that your mind has not yet managed to process it. It's a sign that there's something left to learn from that experience. The trauma, big or small, represents a moment when your map of the world proved to be catastrophically wrong. The event shattered your understanding of yourself, of others, or of the nature of reality. The lingering emotional pain is your nervous system telling you, warning, this territory is still uncharted. The dragon that lives here has not yet been confronted. To simply suppress these memories, to push them back into the fog, is to ensure that they retain their power over you forever. The act of writing them down, carefully and completely, is a form of voluntary therapeutic exploration. It is an incantation to summon the ghost so that you can finally face it. The instruction is to be meticulous. Write down what happened, factually, without blame or justification. Then write down the emotions you felt. Write down the thoughts that went through your mind. Explore the context. What was your life like before this event? What was your life like after? What did you learn from it? Or what could you have learned from it? You are transforming the memory from a terrifying, monolithic monster into a structured narrative with a beginning, a middle, and an end. This process does something remarkable neurobiologically and psychologically. It engages the higher order cortical structures of your brain, particularly the left hemisphere, which is associated with language and order, to process the raw, chaotic emotion housed in the more primitive limbic system. You are, in essence, using the ordering function of language to map the unknown territory of your own past suffering. You are extracting the wisdom from the pain. The goal is not to forget the memory, but to integrate it. It becomes part of your story, a source of strength and knowledge, rather than a source of shame and fear. The tears may still come, but they will be tears of mourning and release, not tears of raw, unprocessed agony. There's a pernicious myth that we've all been sold. The myth of romantic love as a purely spontaneous and effortless phenomenon. You fall in love as if it's an accident, and if you're lucky, you live happily ever after, a passive state of perpetual bliss that requires no maintenance. This is a fantasy, and honestly, it's a deeply destructive one. It sets people up for bitter disappointment, because real, long-term love is not a state of being. It is a practice. It's not something you just find. It's something you build together, day by day, through conscious, deliberate effort. A long-term, intimate relationship, a marriage, is perhaps the most complex and demanding of all human endeavors. You are tying your destiny to another flawed, complicated human being. You will both change over time. You'll face illness, financial stress, tragedy, boredom, and the simple, grinding friction of daily life. The initial passion, that chaotic and exciting state of falling in love, can't possibly sustain the relationship through these trials. That initial state is the launching pad, not the rocket ship itself. To navigate the decades, you need something more robust, a negotiated, truthful, and constantly renewed partnership. This is where planning and diligent work come in. It sounds unromantic, doesn't it? Scheduling a date night, having explicit conversations about desires, resentments, and future plans. But this is, in fact, the absolute bedrock of a healthy relationship. Romance isn't just flowers and candlelit dinners. Romance is the shared adventure of life. And an adventure requires a map, a destination, and constant communication between the adventurers. You must set aside time, sacrosanct time, to simply be with each other, to talk, to listen, and to remember why you chose each other in the first place. You have to ask the hard questions. What are we doing wrong? What resentments are we harboring? What could we do to make life better for each other this week? What is our shared vision for the future? You need to negotiate. You can't just assume your partner knows what you want or need. You have to tell them, and you have to be willing to listen in return. This is difficult work. It requires humility, courage, and a willingness to be vulnerable. But the alternative is to let the relationship drift into the fog of unspoken assumptions and accumulating resentments, where it will inevitably die, a slow, painful death. A relationship doesn't stay good by accident, it stays good by intention. These three states of being, resentment, deceit, and arrogance, are a triad of spiritual poison. They are the gateways to the personal hell that we construct for ourselves, brick by resentful, deceitful, arrogant brick. They are not merely negative emotions or character flaws. They are modes of orientation towards the world that corrupt the soul and lead inexorably to suffering for ourselves and for others. To allow them to take root in your character is to set yourself on a path towards bitterness and destruction. They must be actively and vigilantly resisted every single day. Resentment is the poison you drink, hoping the other person will die. It's the feeling of being wronged, of being a victim, and it is a powerful and seductive narrative. It whispers to you that your suffering is someone else's fault, that the world is unfair, and that you are owed something. It's a backwards-looking emotion that traps you in the prison of the past, replaying grievances over and over. The antidote to resentment is to take responsibility. It's to ask, what part did I play in this? What could I do right now to improve my situation, even by the smallest amount? It is the replacement of blame with agency. Deceit is the tool of the resentful and the weak. It begins with self-deception, the lies we tell ourselves to avoid painful truths. And once you have become comfortable lying to yourself, lying to others becomes second nature. Deceit warps reality. It creates a fragile, artificial world that requires more and more lies to maintain. It severs you from the corrective feedback of truth, ensuring that you will continue to make the same mistakes. The antidote to deceit is a radical commitment to truth, starting with yourself. It is the courage to face reality as it is, not as you wish it were, and to speak that truth carefully and compassionately into the world. Arrogance is the conviction that you know everything you need to know. It is the closing of the mind. The arrogant person cannot learn because they believe they have nothing left to learn. They mistake their current knowledge for the totality of what can be known. This is a catastrophic error because reality is infinitely complex and you are finite and fallible. Arrogance is often a defense against the terrifying recognition of one's own ignorance and vulnerability. The antidote is humility. It is the constant, active awareness that you are ignorant, that your map of the world is incomplete and likely wrong in crucial ways. It is the willingness to listen, to be corrected, and to continually update your understanding. Life is undeniably characterized by suffering. This is a fundamental truth of existence. You will experience pain, loss, betrayal, illness, and ultimately you will face your own mortality. This is the baseline condition. To ignore this, to pretend that life should be a paradise of uninterrupted happiness, is to set yourself up for a catastrophic shock and a descent into bitterness when reality inevitably asserts itself. The question then is not how to avoid suffering, for you cannot, but how to conduct yourself in the face of it. What is the proper orientation towards the tragic conditions of life? This rule proposes what might be the most difficult and paradoxical orientation of all gratitude. Not gratitude for your suffering, which would be masochistic, but gratitude in spite of your suffering. It is the conscious, deliberate act of noticing and appreciating what is good, what is true, and what is beautiful, even when you are in pain. It is to acknowledge the darkness without letting it extinguish the light. It is to look at the terrible fragility of life and to be grateful for the miracle of consciousness, for the gift of being, however brief and fraught with peril it may be. This is not a form of naive optimism or positive thinking. It's a profound act of defiance. It is to stare into the abyss and to affirm that life is still worthwhile. It is to say to the suffering and malevolence of the world, you will not have the final word. You will not turn me into a bitter, resentful, destructive creature. I will still find reasons to be thankful. This is the ultimate act of courage. It is the ability to hold the crushing weight of existence in one hand and the precious, fragile gift of a single good moment in the other, and to not let the weight of the one crush the value of the other. So, how do you practice this? You start small. You pay attention. At the end of a difficult day, you ask yourself, what was one thing today, however small, that I can be grateful for? The taste of a cup of coffee, a moment of quiet, a kind word from a stranger, the beauty of a sunset. By actively seeking out these small points of light, you train your attention. You begin to build a psychological bulwark against despair. You're not denying the reality of your pain. You're simply refusing to allow it to be the only reality. You are choosing to see the whole picture, the tragedy and the glory, and in that choice, you find the strength to endure, and perhaps even to prevail. We've traversed a difficult landscape together today, exploring these 12 rules for a life beyond mere order. These are not simple prescriptions. They are invitations to a more demanding, but ultimately more meaningful mode of being. They're a call to adventure, a call to shoulder the heaviest burden you can bear, and to find, in that act, the antidote to the chaos and meaninglessness that perpetually threaten us. To denigrate our foundations carelessly is to invite chaos. To aim at nothing is to be torn apart by it. To hide from the truth is to allow the dragons to grow in the dark. Each rule is a different facet of the same fundamental idea. That meaning is to be found in the voluntary confrontation with reality. The path outlined here is not one of happiness. It is a path of meaning. And meaning is what sustains us through suffering. It is the deep, instinctual knowledge that what you are doing is worthwhile, that your life has a purpose, that your sacrifices are justified by the noble aim you are pursuing. To make a room beautiful, to maintain love with diligence, to write down the haunting memories, these are not trivialities. They are the ways we practice courage and responsibility in our own lives. They are the training grounds for the heroic spirit, the spirit that can face the darkness without becoming consumed by it, the spirit that can be grateful in spite of suffering. So, I would encourage you to take one of these rules, just one that resonates with you, and to try to live it out for a week. See what happens. Don't do what you hate for a week and see how it changes your sense of self. Try to make one corner of your room beautiful and see if it brings a measure of peace. Aim at who you could be just for a day and feel the difference in your own soul. The world is crying out for individuals who are willing to take themselves seriously, to sort themselves out, and to bring a little more order, truth, and beauty into the world. And that great and noble task starts with you, right here, right now,